Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. So not only is this film the third and the final in the trilogy of the Disney saga, but this is also the concluding chapter of the Skywalker saga as well. So a lot of things to kind of wrap up, a lot of things to cover, especially with the whole, controversy with The Last Jedi. What are my thoughts on the film? We're going to go ahead and get into that right now. But first, I just want to give you guys a heads up, I'm definitely, I'm a Star Wars fan. I would not consider myself, and as you can see, I got my The Force Awakens stand display that I got over here. I'm a Star Wars fan. I would definitely not say I'm like a super hardcore Star Wars fan, so I don't know all the little details and stuff. I haven't read all the, the source material, things like that. I've just seen, like the films, some of the TV shows, but I would not consider myself a hardcore fan. So that's just something I wanted to, preface this video with, just coming from someone that's, enjoys the films, but definitely doesn't consider themselves a hardcore fan. So take that as it is, but without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into things that I liked about this movie. So first, this is directed by J.J. Abrams, who directed The Force Awakens, which I really enjoyed when that came out. So I was excited to see him come back to, the franchise. And I'm not really sure. I'm assuming it must have been scheduling conflicts or something. Maybe he was busy at the time that The Last Jedi, was being made or whatever. That's why he didn't do that one. Otherwise, it's kind of an odd thing why they decided to go, J.J. Abrams, Rian Johnson, then J.J. Abrams back again and not just have one person do the whole saga. But we can get into a whole, video about that. But so he's back. I thought, overall, just as far as the directing goes, how everything looked, there's several shots in this film that I thought were fantastic and were amazing to look at, especially at the big Jordan's IMAX theater that I went to go see this in. So I definitely recommend, if you're going to go see Star Wars, it's one of those movies, obviously, that you would want to see on the biggest screen possible. So for me, that's the Jordan's IMAX in Reading, Massachusetts. So the directing, I thought, did a great job. Something else which might be controversial for some fans, because the film itself that came before this was quite controversial. I was not a fan of The Last Jedi. I've made that quite known. By no means, I don't think it was like awful, but there was just some choices that were made. Specifically, I think what kind of really annoyed me was that he ignored a lot of the plot points that JJ kind of set up in The Force Awakens, and that was just kind of annoying, just being a movie fan. I'm like, okay, we set these up in the previous movie, but I guess we're just going to kind of ignore them. And, one of them being whose Rey's parents are, that was kind of frustrating to me. So I am glad that, JJ Abrams this time around, he kind of course corrected a lot of those choices. And, one of those things, and this is a non-spoiler review, but one of those things, you do end up finding out whose Rey's parents are, but I won't get into that here. So I do like some of the things that he ended up having to fix. I thought that, this film felt like it belonged with The Force Awakens, and that makes sense, it's the same director. But yeah, I thought he did a good job with what he had to do, not only wrapping up this movie, but then coming back in and kind of, fixing some of the, the choices that they went with in the last film and kind of, bringing it back to where he started out with The Force Awakens. Overall, I think the film, was a pretty fast-paced film, which was nice. It comes in at about, I think 2.5 hours, and for me, honestly, didn't really feel like that at all. Seems like we're getting a lot of 2.5, 3-hour movies this year or recently. But yeah, I didn't feel like that at all. Overall, really fast-paced, and there wasn't, at least to me, there wasn't unnecessary subplots that we had in The Last Jedi, the whole thing with Finn and Rose going to that one planet and the races and stuff like that. I thought was a little unnecessary. So there wasn't anything like that in this film that kind of bogged it down, and I'm okay, I kind of want to go see what's going on with these other characters. So nothing like that, no filler, at least in my opinion. As far as the characters go, so for the most part, I really liked, Rey's character art, and notice I say for the most part, because there is a little bit of a negative with something involving her, but I'll mention that in a few minutes. I thought Kylo Ren, I thought he was probably the most interesting, arc out of all the characters, and they do a good job kind of wrapping his arc up with this film as well. Props to the whole team as far as just being able to what they had to work with as far as Leia goes. Obviously with her passing several years back, and I guess this was kind of like extra footage that they have. To me, it really wasn't something that I was able to like notice. So that's pretty cool that they were able to kind of put together a storyline for her, wrap her character up in this film with the footage that they had. So that's pretty amazing. So that's definitely, I would say, one of the most impressive things of this film is definitely, just taking care of that character. She's obviously beloved by, all the Star Wars fans. And from what I've kind of seen, a lot of people are pretty happy with how they wrapped up her storyline in this film and in the saga in general. Poe also had a pretty good storyline, kind of seeing where he started out in The Force Awakens and where he's at now. I think they did a pretty good job as far as like those characters kind of, really paying off their story arcs in this final film. Something else too, so not only just like the characters that we've had for the past couple movies, but I thought in this film too, there was a couple, like characters that were introduced that I thought were, cool or interesting. Specifically, we end up going to this one planet at one point in the movie, and we find out that this person's a friend of Poe, and her name is Zori Bliss. I wish we almost got to know her or her character like a little bit more, but I was really interested in her character. I thought the design of like the armor and stuff looked really cool. So keep an eye out for her, and let me know what you guys think of her as well. So that was something I think in this movie that they, bringing in some interesting like side characters, that's always fun. So it's like even when the main characters, you're not entirely focused on them, you have some cool like background or side characters as well. So they did a good job with that. Now, as far as negatives go for this film, so there's a couple. The one thing I mentioned earlier is that for the most part, I really liked Rey's story arc. I thought that they did a good job with it. However, there were a couple moments that, was almost like on the verge of kind of like rolling your eyes. And I could totally understand people who, might be upset with kind of what some of the choices that they made with her character. Like I said, I won't go into too much detail as far as that goes, but I could totally see, if some people were a little mad. We were leaving the theater, me and my fiance, last night, and there were some people walking behind us, and they were kind of like talking about that, and I could totally see that argument. It wasn't something for me that totally like ruined the movie or anything like that for me, and like I said, maybe it's because I'm not like super invested into these characters like some people are, but I could totally see that argument. So it's not something that was like huge for me. The other thing was that Finn's character, I feel like he really didn't have a whole lot to do in this movie, and it's kind of sad because like he really started off with a cool arc, in The Force Awakens with him being a stormtrooper and then kind of getting away from that and joining the Resistance. But I feel like he just really didn't have a whole lot to do in this movie, so they kind of threw him away, and like, he's a good actor, so I feel like that was definitely just kind of like wasted potential as far as, his character goes. So it's too bad he didn't kind of have more of a bigger role to play in this film. And then the only other thing that I would like mention as far as, just the Emperor being in this movie is that I feel like it might have been almost cooler if they would have saved his reveal for like later on in the movie and not introduce, not just kind of like started things off being like, yep, everyone like, knows basically he's alive and everything. That it might have been cooler to kind of save that reveal for like later on and, making it a surprise. That would have, I think, really caught a lot of people off guard. So, but those are pretty much like my negatives as far as it goes. Overall, I really enjoyed this movie. I think it's really kind of on par with The Force Awakens, which I really did enjoy when I saw that. I think it's way better than The Last Jedi. I know there are some fans of that film out there, but personally, I just didn't really care for it. A lot of the choices they decided to make in there. But yeah, I came out of this movie, it did what I wanted to do. I really enjoyed myself. I was kind of worried going into this movie that it was possibly going to suck because I did see like the bad, Rotten Tomato ratings and just a lot of people. I was hearing a lot of really, mixed reviews. So I was like, oh no, like I really hope this isn't as bad as some people say it is. But I went into the movie with trying to keep like an open mind, and I really enjoyed it. I thought they did a pretty good job, wrapping everything up with what they had to work with. And, for at least for me, I think it's a satisfying conclusion to this part of the Star Wars franchise. Obviously, from what I've heard, it sounds like they're going to be making more Star Wars films down the road. But at least as far as this saga goes, I think they did a good job. So overall, as far as score goes, I think I'm going to give this movie an 8 out of 10. It was, really solid. I had a really fun time with it. My fiance liked it as well, and she's not really like a Star Wars fan at all. I think she's only seen basically the new saga, the Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. But she liked this movie too. So even for people that aren't like huge Star Wars fans, I think that you might enjoy this movie. So let me know what your guys' thoughts are down below in the comments. I'm sure there's going to be some controversial opinions. Definitely be nice to each other down there. And no spoilers too. I know the movie's out its opening weekend, but try and keep it spoiler free so that way the people who haven't seen it can go ahead and check it out. But yeah, let me know what you guys think, and as always, make sure to leave a comment as well as hit that bell button so that way you're subscribed to all my videos and get notifications. And as always, guys, make sure to check back for more Pop Culture with Pat.